Interactive radio.
Tweet at 1395 5AA.
Peter Godfrey.
17 minutes past 5. Let's head across to New Zealand. Selwyn Manning from LiveNews.co.nz. Hi, Selwyn.
Yeah, g'day Peter, how are things?
Good. First time we've had a chat for the year.
It is, it seems like an age.
It does. It seems like, it seemed like last year. And I'm sure there's been a lot happening in the political world in New Zealand as it has been happening here.
Yeah.
Let's get on to discussions of the minimum wage. Now, first glance, minimum wage in New Zealand to increase, but not by a lot though.
Yeah, remember to convert into New Zealand dollars when I make reference to these numbers, Peter, which I think at the moment for $1 New Zealand dollar there's about 78 Australian
somewhere there, yes.
So,
yep, I think you're right.
But yeah, the national-led government's increased the minimum wage by 50 cents. That's up from 13 New Zealand dollars an hour to $13.50. You've got to remember, a lot of employers are paying this, particularly for the those in their late teens and early 20s or entering into a new job.
Into perspective, I've already done the translation into Australian dollar, $10.45 Australian.
Yeah, it's pretty miserable.
So pretty low, yeah.
It was under a lot of pressure, the National Party, when it was campaigning in the last election over these issues. There was a lot of debate about its policy where, that minimum wage we just referred to, Peter, is for those that are not straight out of school or going into a new kind of career. The government has allowed for employers to only pay around just over 10 New Zealand dollars per hour for people in that category. That can kind of the argument from the Nationals is that allows employers to take a chance, and they're saying that if they increase the amount for people entering in like that and in the younger age groups to with parity with the adult minimum wage, well then that's going to be a negative for those younger people trying to get into work. So that's its rhetoric. The Labour Party here, it's saying, well, this is just miserable. It's missing an opportunity of trying to put steps in place that are going to address the inequality on a wage scale here in New Zealand. There's a huge difference. Obviously, from those figures we just quoted that there's a huge difference between those minimum wage levels and what you would assume in an ordinary job, even if you've been in it for a couple of years. So what they're saying is people who have invested a lot of their time and effort in getting educated or trained then kind of slapped with a very, very low kind of wage here. Also, the New Zealand First Party that won the elections, to get back into didn't win the election, but won at the election last year to get back into Parliament. The New Zealand First leader, Winston Peters, he's come out and he said this is just a pittance, that's just an insult. And he's obviously making a real play for that same kind of area that Labor is concerned about. And Winston Peters is a formidable opposition MP, and the Nationals have been under a lot of pressure in Parliament this week over this issue, Peter.
What are unions or business groups saying? I guess different stories from either side, but are they getting into this, weighing into the discussion?
Yeah, the unions have long argued that the minimum wage should be brought up to, a reasonable level, and that they're kind of suggesting is around the $15 per hour New Zealand dollars. And they're saying for the same purposes and same rhetoric as what the Labour Party is kind of addressing there, that really the inequalities that are entrenched into New Zealand society, particularly in that low wage area where the cost of living, the rental situations, for example, have gone up by around about 7%. While wages have stagnated. They're saying that does need to be addressed, that inflation, while it's not soaring ahead, inflation inches up every year. These are the arguments that you'd be familiar with in Australia too, I'm sure.
Exactly, yeah.
And that the cost of living at the end of the day, when you iron it out for the whole country, might not look so bad, but for those who are trying to actually, make better of their lot, that their cost of living is extraordinarily high and one of the worst that you could imagine from a developed nation. So the union position is really speaking to the experience of many, many thousands of New Zealanders.
What about the business community or business groups? Are they making any comment?
It's mixed. The business representative kind of groups, they kind of are saying, that the National Party is on message here, that, there is a consequence for employees. If employers are kind of thinking, okay, we've got to pay the same as an adult who's skilled in this particular area, that's virgin, the job and the quality of the pay packet is going to be close to the minimum wage. Well, if the government lifts up that entry-level amount to that level, well, they would go with the more experienced adult as opposed to giving a younger person a chance. So you can see that they're kind of saying what's in the minds of many employers, but at the same time, many employers are kind of saying, well, hang on a minute. We've seen this in the TV interviews, mainly here in New Zealand, but employers themselves saying, well, hang on a minute, we often get the very best work from the younger employee. So it's a kind of a mixed area, and really it's one that I've raised this morning because it's demonstrating the differences that are showing and have shown in the New Zealand Parliament. We can expect very much that the current government, the national-led government, to very much side with the more conservative element, should we say, of the employer fraternity in New Zealand.
All right, another topic that I think we need to watch with interest. Nationals went, of course, to your election late last year with a plan to sell off a lot of state-owned assets. A lot of resistance, though, coming from the Maori Party.
Yeah, there is. Now, what's underlying this is National's plan is considered to be one of the more clever ones that's come out of this kind of ideology in recent years, and it's to partially sell the state-owned assets. Now, I think there's experience of this going on in Australia and different states as well. And it's the energy sector mainly that the national government has been looking at. So the power generation, the electricity generation sector, there's a group of state-owned assets there, and it's wanting to sell off around 49% of those by floating them on the share market and allowing investment. There is certain regulation around that would prohibit a degree of foreign investment in the first wave of sales to try and facilitate the purchase by Kiwis in the first instance. That kind of detail has really got to be rolled out. A lot of the detail that we're referring to here is in the discussion documents that were put out only last week. Now, in those discussion documents, it was anticipated and expected that there would be provision to refer to the Treaty of Waitangi here. Just about everything in the government circuit, the government's information, its documents, its policy, its statements, all rests with some sort of reference to the Treaty of Waitangi, where it honours certain aspects of the treaty. And this document came out with these state-owned assets, and how it would go, in the discussion document, albeit, and how it would go towards sale. But it was omitting any reference to the treaty, and specifically, the State-Owned Enterprises Act has a Section 9 that targets the treaty obligations. Now, that Section 9 was taken out, which caused the Māori Party that only a short time ago had shaken hands with the Nationals and said, yep, we'll support you in your legislative plan, we'll support you on the state-owned assets, and we'll enjoy the privileges of office for that agreement. Now, the Māori Party has come out and they're saying, we just do not like this. It's an insult to us. It's an insult to Māoridom. It's an insult to New Zealand that's founded on the treaty, that it's admitted it from its papers. Now, all of that is kind of like, the process of getting towards selling these assets. It's caused a huge storm over here, and we've seen other Māori leaders in the community saying, well, they take the treaty clauses out and, well, they're not going to have our support. We've had the Māori Council, it's a very, very powerful group of senior elders who have taken this issue to the court. Now, they're saying these hydroelectric kind of aspects of the state-owned enterprises that they're selling, the water that is flowing through to generate the power, that water is actually a possession of Māori. And so, therefore, we don't agree with this. And so they're taking that to the court to try and get a ruling that would possibly show that, yes, the water that flows through the rivers they have customary title over this. And so that could actually stall it for some time.
Okay, so it's not going to be smooth sailing, the plan to sell off then, quite clearly?
Not at all.
No.
It's not smooth sailing at all, Peter. So it's one where the national government has come through this election with a very powerful percentage of the popular vote, but has found as soon as it's got into Parliament with one of its key plank policies, it has not yet been able to position enough kind of support amongst even its friends to deliver on that policy.
All right. Well, I'm sure we're going to be talking more about this down the track, Selwyn. Look forward to that. Watch that with interest. Thanks for joining us this morning. We'll catch you again next week.
Okay, Peter, you take care.
Thanks, Selwyn.
Bye-bye.
Selwyn Manning from LiveNews.co.nz. Head there for the latest New Zealand news. It's 5:28.